Hello, all you liberty lovers out there. My name is Graham Helsebeck. This is a special video report for the Heresy Herald. HeresyHerald.com, Facebook.com/Heresy Herald, Twitter.com/Heresy Herald. I wanted to bring you an update on the Republican surge in the Senate, House of Representatives. Both chambers of Congress saw massive groundswell support for the Republican candidates. I'm in the enviable position to be asked by some close friends for opinions on political matters and such. And I've had some comments directed my way, like a friend recently asked me if this meant that Obamacare would be repealed. Now that the Republicans have control of both chambers of Congress. And of course, that's not going to happen. I mean, first of all, the Republicans wrote Obamacare with the giant insurance companies, and it's not designed to give people health care. I mean, yes, I have actually some pretty liberal tendencies. Actually would not be opposed to an absolute socialist model of health care, just because people can't always control the conditions they're born under, and then if you have some kind of a pre-existing condition, you should be provided for the government. This is just like people that live on the beach or on the extreme edge of the coast are not able to get insurance through a private insurance carrier, so they have to get it through FEMA. Well, if people have a pre-existing medical condition that disables them from buying insurance from a private company, they should be given some level of government care that is provided for by taxpayer money for the general welfare of the people. I mean, I believe that. But of course, Republicans wrote Obamacare. Mitt Romney was the first to get it passed, the prototype in Massachusetts. And so, of course, he was just posing as the fake alternative to Obama in 2008 and 2012. 08 before McCain knocked him out in the primaries. But anyway, it is designed as a fascist overhaul to enrich the giant insurance companies, put the mom and pops out of business, and leech off the American people to enrich the elites who control the major offshore banks that actually run this country. Because, of course, mainly the top 6 mostly foreign banks actually control the Federal Reserve, which prints our money and hands it to the Treasury that we have to, as taxpayers, pay back with interest. When, of course, our Constitution was set up for Congress to control the money, to coin money. It's actually a power in the Constitution delegated to them under Article 1 of the Constitution, under the acts of the powers of Congress. And of course, the 1913 Federal Reserve Act, passed by Woodrow Wilson's Congress in 1913, got rid of all that, so that private bankers now control almost everything. And the IRS was created the same year. We didn't have a federal income tax until then, and we really, most states didn't. There wasn't any widespread federal income tax until after World War II and during World War II. So anyway, I'm getting off on a big diatribe and tangent. The point is, Republicans will of course not repeal Obamacare, and if it's not enough to realize that they wrote it, Mitch McConnell and John Boehner, whatever however you pronounce it. I've heard it each of those 3 ways. Speaker of the House for the Republican Party, along with the leader of the Senate, the now Majority Leader, not Harry Reid now, Mitch McConnell for the Republican Party. Both McConnell and Boehner have said they're not going to repeal Obamacare. They said so in their victory speeches on the night of the elections last Tuesday. So of course that's not going to happen. Of course not. The giant insurance companies who fund their campaigns helped the Republicans write Obamacare, with the prototype being passed by Mitt Romney's Congress in 2004 in Massachusetts. Obama literally tweaked a few things out of the Cornhusker kickback, the Louisiana Purchase, all these little private deals, to get Democrats to pass it. Remember, it was passed on Christmas Eve, literally on Christmas Eve, with 0 Republican votes, and it is called this bipartisan measure. Now, it is bipartisan in the fact that the Republicans will not repeal it. They don't even oppose it. They just pose as the fake alternative to confuse people and continue this trend of a fake two-party paradigm that is destroying the country in large measure. It's one of the many reasons it's going downhill. Another issue that got brought up is the whole gay marriage issue. Why am I voting for Tom Tillis? I'm a libertarian. Well, here's the thing. I understand Republicans are a fake alternative to the Democrats, and this is a vicious cycle, the two-party system. I did post on my personal Facebook, not on my website, not on my Heresy Herald Facebook, not on Twitter, but on my personal site that I'm not going to be voting for Sean Hall. You should also, if you're a libertarian, consider voting for Tillis. And at that point, Tillis was trailing in the polls. In the consensus, he was trailing by about 0.5 percentage point. Some polls had him down 2 and 3%. Others had it dead. The consensus was that he was going to lose by about 0.5 percentage point. And I thought if I could swing over even 3 or 4 voters by posting a personal message, then I would have done my duty to try and get a Republican in the Senate for North Carolina. The only reason for it being that I wanted some check of the federal government so that there's just not an all-out dictatorial overthrow of the executive branch of our federal government. Because right now you've got a guy in power that I think cares absolutely none for the Constitution. He said it's a, quote, deeply imperfect document that represents a blind spot in American culture, close quote. You can look up the quote. He said that when he was a constitutional law professor. And, of course, Bush has been quoted on Air Force One as saying the Constitution is a GD piece of paper. So our last 2 presidents haven't particularly cared a great deal about the Constitution. You have the Patriot Act, and, of course, Obama signed the NDAA. People know what the NCAA is in this country, but not the NDAA. And the NDAA is the National Defense Authorization Act, and it's designed to put basically a rendition of American citizens and throw them in jail at any point. Of course, Obama signed an executive order, actually amended Bush's order for the SARS outbreak to now handle Ebola. That is, he literally changed the verbiage in the executive order to now say anybody with respiratory symptoms can be thrown in jail indefinitely. And now doctors are reporting that people are being disappeared from hospitals with Ebola-like symptoms, hemorrhagic fever. And the hospitals are later just saying that it was actually malaria, usually malaria or some other related disease that's common in Africa but has no hemorrhagic fever symptoms. And they're just being wheeled out and disappeared in the middle of the night. Those reports are coming all over the country. Here I am getting way off track. The point is, I voted for Tillis because I wanted the Republicans to take back the Senate so that there is at least some check on Obama's power. Now, because the Republicans control both the House and the Senate, it's going to be difficult for Obama to get any legislation passed, which is, I think, excellent. I don't want to see any legislation passed. I would love to see, the only legislation I want to see passed is repeals. So if Republicans think that they can continue this blue blood country club rhino scheme to just pose as a fake alternative and then pass and sign on to and refuse to repeal the same bills that the Democrats have passed, then I think you could see actually a split in the Republican Party, and you could actually get a major political paradigm shift where you get a serious libertarian movement. And I think that's the Tea Party and the Libertarians are one of the last hopes for this country in a nonviolent revolution using truth as a weapon. But that's not something I'm too optimistic about. I do think it's one of the best chances we have to save the country from a total coup overthrow of the basically just getting rid of what is basically our version of Parliament. Just get rid of all that and just have a dictator up there signing executive orders, making the laws, passing the laws, telling Congress they have no say, and getting the United Nations to sign on to bringing foreign troops in here and controlling everything for the private banking cartel called the Federal Reserve, which is private. So gay marriage was not on the top of my agenda. I'm personally not opposed to gay marriage. I'm personally for gay marriage. I don't understand why Republicans often think that it's some kind of a freedom-based agenda to ban people from practicing non-violent offenses that don't hurt anybody in their own house, like marijuana would be another example. Of course, George Washington, the founder of our army and the first president of the country, wrote letters to John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. They all grew marijuana in their gardens. Washington wrote in his letters that are publicly available on the Library of Congress website. Washington talked about separating the indica sativa blends and then getting the male-female separate across the creek bed. I mean, I've read all the documents, all these letters. They're publicly available, libraryofcongress.gov. And, of course, they weren't illegal till Woodrow Wilson, who also got the Federal Reserve Act and the IRS. And the reason they're illegal is because the government can't get a piece of them, because they can't control it or tax it. They haven't figured out ways to do it. They're starting to get it through states. But when they don't get their cut, they still come in here and bust people up, even in states where it's legal. So all of that's going on. So yes, I'm personally opposed to many of Tillis's stances and understand that gay marriage is a very, very important issue to some people, but it's just really not even on my radar screen when at least this last election when I was voting for Thom Tillis. Sean Hall would have been the ideal candidate for me. I would have loved to see him in the Senate, but he was polling at about 3.5% to 4.5%, depending on which poll you looked at, and so he had no chance to compete. If Tillis was ahead 5 points, I would have voted for Sean Hall. Politics is a dirty game. It is what it is, and Tillis is in here. I think the Republicans have a chance to move towards libertarianism, but the first thing they're doing is now attacking the Tea Party, and I think it's going to be detrimental to their country club establishment, blue blood regime that they've had going, working with the insurance companies for so long to screw over the American people. So think about the issues. Don't obsess over the football issues, the minor things. We've got some really serious problems with this country right now, and I'd love to see Obamacare totally repealed. Of course, it will not happen just because the Republicans are in power. Sadly, they really don't pose much of an alternative to the Democrats, but it is at least a check on unrestricted legislative power that was just, basically has gone over a cliff to a level of absolute insanity in the last 10 years, where a president can absolutely do anything he wants except for just basically declaring himself a monarch. And, it wouldn't take much for that to actually happen right now. There's a tipping point. All it would take, I think, is a low-grade suitcase nuke going off in Manhattan or Dallas or some major Chicago, especially with Obama in power, probably Chicago. And of course, the prime suspect, if that did happen, would be elements inside the government, inside the Obama administration. If a low-grade suitcase nuke goes off in Chicago and he declares himself monarch and dissolves Parliament, Congress, he would be the prime suspect. That's probably, eventually, if our country does fall and become a dictatorship with an absolute monarch, that's how it would happen. So anyway, big issues to think about. I supported the Republican candidate in North Carolina for Senate, Thom Tillis, because I wanted a check on unrestricted power at the executive level. And I almost feel guilty for doing it. Anyway, I'm coming to the end of my 15 minutes. I'm Graham Helsebek, signing off at HeresyHerald.com. God bless you. God bless America.